see that you were sworn in on October 31st of 2017. Do you think that since there's so much uproar from the teens does that make you nervous for what could happen with the gun laws in New Jersey?
It doesn't make me nervous. I'm certainly concerned about it, like every other citizen, I think, in the state and the country. Even more so as a parent. I have 4 children myself. My youngest is a junior in college out in Pennsylvania. So I think it's a discussion that obviously needs to be taking place on a daily basis with, I think we're up to 27 school shootings in the first 2.5 months of 2018. So this discussion needs to happen, and as does change.
And New Jersey actually happens to have some really strict gun laws. Do you think that all states should kind of follow our lead in our gun laws?
I would probably say that you've nailed it, that our gun laws are strict. There are some states where it is, in my opinion, far too easy to walk in there and buy any type of weapon. So I think if we could standardize that gun legislation, I think it would certainly lend to a much safer nation. I do believe that.
And our gun age is actually 18. Do you think you would want to raise that to 21, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a question that you could bounce around. I hear both sides of the argument. If we can send our men and women into battle at the age of 18, why wouldn't they be able to purchase that? Same thing with alcohol and cigarettes. But I think a weapon, especially those assault-type rifles, in my estimation, the maturity level for somebody at the age of 18, not saying that across the board, but I think it would be a good thing to consider to raise that age to 21.
And some people think that the term semi-automatic in reference to an AR-15 is actually inaccurate. What do you think about that?
Inaccurate?
Inaccurate.
Well, anything that could that has, whether it's magazine capacity or the ability to fire that many rounds in such a short period of time. Again, I guess we could argue over the definition of semi-automatic and automatic all day long. The argument's been had, but the fact that a weapon can shoot that much, that fast, is certainly concerning, not only to parents and students and teachers, but really for law enforcement too, because that firepower, sometimes not all of our officers and troopers in the country are prepared to come up against that.
And what about arming schools? Do you think that metal detectors and putting enhanced security measures in place is a good idea, or do you think that makes it seem more like a jail?
I think it's a good idea. I think if you think back, I know you weren't around, but 40 years ago you used to be able to walk into Newark Airport and get on a plane without going through any type of screening. It was a different mindset. If you remember, after 9/11 or after the shoe bomber, the fact of taking off your shoes and the various things, it becomes part of your culture and process. So although it's somewhat unfortunate to have to admit, I think more security at front doors, side doors, and I certainly think magnetometers. I know East Brunswick School District, right in the wake of Parkland, went to armed officers in every school. It's a tough decision to make, but given, as I said, we started with talking about 27 school shootings in a couple months, I think it's a necessary target hardening. I think there's multiple prongs to this discussion, from legislation, I think mental health, I think school-based community policing, but I don't think it's an overreaction to have armed police officers at this juncture. I think when we do a vulnerability assessment, that is certainly something that we look at, the ability to get in from a side door, and what are the protocols for whether it's janitors or maintenance or teachers to have different processes throughout the day that make sure that those doors are secured and not breached. But in the event, somebody pulls a fire alarm, or there's a school event out on the football field, and you have, in some instances, 1,000 or 2,000 students exiting all various points of the school, it's probably not too difficult to get back in and mingle in with that student population. So it's certainly something that I think all school districts need to consider with regard to their own facilities.
Now, there's been a number of school threats in New Jersey since what happened in Parkland. How is the state police working with school administrators? Are you guys having conversations? Like, what's being done?
We are having conversations. We actually have a partnership with Department of Education. There's a new commissioner there, Commissioner Repollet. We also, a big partner with us is the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness with Director Jared Maples. We have a component of both state police Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness and Department of Education that goes around and almost does announced and unannounced drills to make sure schools are prepared for certain active shooter scenarios. I've recently spoken to a superintendent up in North Jersey, and at the end of March we'll be going up to there in concert with their local police department to do a vulnerability assessment and to see what other measures they may be able to take. But there's, from student training, teacher training, again, I think having officers intermingle with the students on a routine basis is also helpful because it also creates that conversation where if students see another student that may be struggling mentally or may, be having some issues or make some threats, I don't think we can take statements on social media or even in the hallway as idle threats anymore. So I think having law enforcement in there is a good way to keep that line of communication open and identify somebody who may be thinking of harming themselves or the students.